as you already said, my background is I was involved in building up, building up one FabLab in Linz in a museum setting, and am now in charge for the educational program at the Vienna FabLab, the HappyLab. And so I want to make my presentation today about how FabLab can work or can address education in an out of school context. How, like, on what level can or could they function to give us some sort of education or learning environment, whatever we want to learn or whatever we want to be educated about. This is still something to be discussed, I guess, like from the lunch talks we had. It's not that clear, like what exactly everybody means to learn in this context. So what I want to do is give you a short introduction into these two different approaches I took over the last 5 years, which are quite different, and then have some time for discussion, hopefully. So I will not go into what a FabLab is about. We have all slightly different notions of what a FabLab is or should be or can be. That's not my job to do this here again. As I said, I want to report from my experience how current or emerging technologies, especially in the area of digital fabrication, can be a topic in this sort of environment. So I think there are a lot of different layers where education or learning can happen when we talk about new technologies. It can be actually just knowing about that there is something as a new technology that potentially could do something as print something in 3D. Like just to get actually to see a machine like that or a product that has been produced like that is some sort of new understanding, some sort of new learning. Then of course there is like the first engagement to it, actually doing something yourself with it, actually getting some sort of personal experience with it. And then there's like the most deep level of it, actually incorporating it in your daily life maybe, or school education, or like incorporating it in your personal life realities. So I want to start with the Ars Electronica FabLab. The Ars Electronica FabLab is an exhibition and workshop area within a permanent exhibition of the Ars Electronica Center. For those of you who don't know the Ars Electronica organization, the Ars Electronica is an organization dealing with the interrelations between technology, society, and art. And especially in the museum, they try to reflect those correlations with a lot of exhibits and exhibitions. And in 2009, for the reopening of the museum, the decision was made to have a FabLab there as a sort of active workshop area, to introduce people to potentials of digital fabrication technologies, like how might they in future maybe shape how we are doing things, how others are doing things, how we are maybe working, what tools we need to have access to, all this sort of sort of things. So this is how the FabLab there looks like. It's about 70 square meters, which is not even the room here. It's like half the size of the room here. And it's essentially divided into 3 different areas, like let's say 4 different areas. There is a design area that lets people create digital data on tabletops, on tablets, in fact. There is a fabrication area where designs can be produced, and this essentially consists of a laser cutter and 3D printer. There is no milling machine, there is no electronics included in that FabLab out of a whole lot of different reasons, because it's too noisy and too dusty for an exhibition environment. It would just not work. And there is a gallery aimed at triggering some inspiration, like what actually can be done with this exhibits. And this gallery is both featuring projects that have been done by artists, by industry, by medicine, by engineers, with the technologies presented in the area. But it's also featuring digitally the project that visitors actually just created in the lab. So you see the screens here, which is showing the digital objects that just got to be created on the desktop computers, and you see printed out models of that, and you, like not on this side particularly, but on the other side, you will see a lot of different exhibits from medical background, as I said earlier. And also as being a museum of interactive art somehow as well, there are interactive installation dealing with a very tangible access to generating a 3-dimensional model, generating a 3-dimensional data set, or not just three-dimensional, also two-dimensional data set that then eventually also can show up in the gallery and can be produced on the machines. So yeah, we already had a look at the exhibition area, at the gallery area. Now I have a screenshot of the actual desktop of the Wacom tablets that are in use there. As you see, there's a choice of 8 different software programs people get to choose when they're entering the FabLab. And our aim was that actually people can come into the FabLab, create something, and produce it, and take it home with them in one tour of in one tour of visit. So this also means for the museum that it has to be affordable price-wise to give away the material, and it has to be quite in a quite short time frame. It has to happen in a quite short time frame. This is why 3D printing is not really suitable in context of everyday museum visitors that they're planning to stay in the museum for 2 hours, because as we heard, 3D printing can take up to 53 hours or whatever this example was. So this was, yeah. So we focused on ways to produce 2D or also 3D out of two-dimensional shapes. There's a lot of different ways. You can like layer them on top of each other. You can like, as this is a customized software rotation model, you can like, which is working. It's a rotation tool. You draw one side of the silhouette. It gets automatically rotated around the axis. Thus, it's forming a three-dimensional shape, like an axis rotated three-dimensional shape, which is 3D. But then you can go to the laser cut and just cut out the silhouettes, stick them together like that, which is sort of an idea, like a very, very cheap idea of the three-dimensional shape you actually created earlier on the desktop. I mean, I guess you know all of those commercial programs. FiberMesh model is a special thing as well. It's based on a research project done by a Japanese university, which is converting hand-drawing shapes into three-dimensional models, and then again spreading it out into like files, into vector files to cut it out on a laser cutter, maybe to sew the pet toy together out of the fabric, cut it out afterwards. So here I have a picture of the more or less everyday scenario of how the FabLab there is used. You see these Wacom tablets, you see the rather small laser cutter, you see the 3D printer. What you don't see is the 2D printer and 3D scanning devices and the rest of the gallery. So what can a FabLab like this in a museum do? It can essentially show what possibilities there are, what other people did with similar technologies around the world. It can give you a very focused access to some certain tools that you can actually get access to, try out and produce and get a certain form of idea. But it's also like limited in the context of a FabLab. It's not like a FabLab stretching the whole thing to make almost everything. Yeah, there's no electronics included, as I already said. And there's also no space to actually get dirty, and there's no time to actually experiment and iterate on your design over and over again. So, yeah, so much to that part of it. Might be come back to that later. So the second project I'm involved in, fine so far, no questions? Okay, so the second project I'm involved in is the HappyLab, the Vienna FabLab, with this very funny name of HappyLab, which is very contrary to the museum exhibition. It understands itself as an open high-tech workshop area with giving access to everyone who wants. Rather more than less, to be honest. It's really very open, everybody can come. It's organized in a way that there's open evenings every Wednesday, especially targeting new users or new visitors that have no idea what this whole thing is about. They're like guided tours, but also there's like opening hours throughout the week. You're like welcome to come. It's based on a membership model, so you actually have to get to be a member of the FabLab in order to be able to use it. Other than the open evening on Wednesday evening. But the membership starts at a very low level of €3 per month. So this is not, we think this is not a real threshold, like where people decide that, well, maybe that's too expensive. I rather not do that. You can get like higher subscription rates if you choose to have your own key and want 24/7 access to the FabLab. But even then, it's like, I think it's for personal use, it stops at like €20 a month. just for those who are interested in these numbers, because I've heard that this financing aspect was quite an issue, or is always an issue in all these FabLab discussion rounds. So it's an open high-tech workshop spreading over 250 square meters, which is like good. There is quite some space to work in. Aiming at opening up access to tools, and especially digital fabrication tools, but also like normal craft tools, hand-operated tools. And it's very, very much centered on self-motivated project building and peer-to-peer learning. Like, there is not an instructor there telling you what you should do. There's not hardly someone there like really giving you guidance how you operate the machine. There's like lessons to do that, but afterwards you're like very much to yourself. Whatever you do with it, do your own project. It understands itself as a Fab Lab, which is quite important as well, I guess. Which is and it's open in this. It's open since 2010 in the form it is today. Yeah, nice picture. That's the logo. Again, like stating the essential parts of it, but yeah, that's kind of obvious. Like electronics, vinyl printer, 3D printer, laser cutters, CNC machines. There's a dark room for making PC boards or photography or whatever. Okay, so I still have 2 more pictures. It's the entry area and the lobby, and that's like a collection of pictures. How the Fab Lab looks from a lot of different angles, if you're interested. Okay, so this open environment is great for those who actually know what they want to do and know how to operate machines somehow, but it's definitely putting some challenges for more unexperienced user, which also children are part of. For them, it's very difficult to come to the lab and do themselves directed whatever they want, because like actually gathering initial knowledge to operate the machine is an issue, and also it's an issue for us to guarantee that they're safe. So we cannot just let them come in whenever they want, as we do it with the adult users, because they're like they're responsible for what they're doing, which is like rather difficult for a 10-year-old child. So we wanted to address this issue, and we started to make workshop for children. Here you see a flyer. We started to making workshops for 10 to 15-year-olds, because we said like at 16 you're somehow allowed to enter the lab on yourself, so we started at 10 to 15. We wanted to give them, and in these workshops they are structured to introduce the Fab Lab and its possibilities, like the room per se, but also giving a lot of background, no, not a lot of, but giving some background information. Again, like what are these machines used for in other contexts, who else is using these machines, how they might evolve in some years and maybe then influence what we all are doing. And then, of course, the focus is set on actually getting some hands-on projects done, individual projects done that they can actually take home afterwards as well. So it's not like coming there, doing something and going and not having anything. I mean, we heard this like in all of the talks before, so I'm just repeating here. And also the important point here, because it's about Fab Lab as out-of-school learning, is that they're actually working in a fully functioning Fab Lab, which means there's other people around. They see what they are doing or how they're actually using the infrastructure. It's not like this safe environment for children where they do something, but it's also seeing other people how they are or what projects they're doing. So there's like some sort of peer inspiration or peer learning taking place as well. Okay, so we had 2 different programs. We started with a 2-day workshop spanning over 2D design, 3D design, electronics, and also programming, which was quite successful, I have to admit. We're like overbooked and people wanted to come back afterwards, so we were facing a challenge like, okay, what do we do next with them? And also like a 2-day program is not allowing like an immense amount of stuff to be happening and like really personal projects to be developed. So what we started is the HappyLab Kids Club, which is a program that runs over a semester and invites children to come to the Fab Lab once a week. And having the idea was to have like learning Fab Lab like learning tennis. Like you go every week for 3 hours to the Fab Lab, and we had some sort of things we tell them, some sort of instructions we give them, but the focus there is again much more set on like let them do what they actually want to do, which again is not that easy for all kinds of children because some of them just know what they want to do if they're like just to do whatever you want. So like we try to give some sort of introduction that helps them like getting a first getting into first contact with the available machines, materials, like having a lot of different materials, whatever. But then like over the duration of a semester, they are like asked to develop more their own projects. And in fact, we're right now at it's still 2 weeks to go, so we're like at the development phase of the final projects, more or less. So this is the blog we have for documenting what is actually what's actually happening. Yeah. See some constructions going on, yeah, the prototypes, the final product. That's actually a documentation a girl did themselves, which is pretty unusual because as I already wrote the issue before, it's not obvious that children actually want to document their projects themselves. Okay, so much to a broad overview for the education program we run in the Vienna FabLab. And if we look again at the triangle I had earlier, which had slightly different words, but whatever. Like the first example was like very strong at like giving a broad overview and showing you a lot of different things that are happening, but it somehow ended like at the level of first engagement. Like you could get some sort of hands-on experience, but you could not really like make it your own personal experience doing something you're incorporating in your I don't know, home or whatever, having it permanently available for you. So I think this is like very different qualities that these two infrastructures can offer. And it's also very different caretaking dimensions these two programs need. Because if I work with 10 children, I need at least one instructor, if not 2 or 3. But I can make a gallery and like just let people walk through and make a presentation and say like, well, this is how a cutter works, so this is how a printer works. So like, whereas the experience in the museum is rather channeled and to a big extent maybe also rather passive one, if you're actually taking part in one of these workshops at the FabLab, you're like meant to be active, otherwise you're just sitting there, it's maybe not that much fun. Okay, so while my title of the title of my talk was Outer School Building Institutions, there is still a very, very important part to actually connect to the school, I think. Because like we had free workshops, like all the workshops were free, and even for the semester-long program we charged very, very minimal material fee. But even if you make the program free and you think you distribute all the information equally, you hand out flyers, you go into schools, you have it in the newspaper, wherever, you just get a very, very limited amount of children who are actually signing up for it. And that's mostly through their parents, because children hardly like get the flyer, but maybe in school, but like they don't read the newspaper and say like, Mommy, I want to go to this workshop, please register me for that. So it's like rather going through the parents that they're actually registering the children. So you miss out on a whole lot of the actual children, a population of children. So I think there is a big need to actually combine FabLab activities with schools, because there you have a much broader group you can address on a much more equal and more inclusive level. But then again, the question is, and we had a lot of discussions around that topic in the talks and also in between the talks, how to manage that. Having a FabLab school is like a very, very hard task. It's like, it's competences and money-wise, it's not that easy. It's not like it's not happening tomorrow. So there are like maybe other ways to like start this process slowly, like having a mobile equipment that can tour schools and at least give a short experience of what is eventually possible, and telling a story that this is like actually happening somewhere else. So if you are interested, come over. Or you could, as also there was this topic before, like having curricula that are interconnecting FabLab and school experiences, and are also like balancing between the actual spaces, like having the school and the FabLab as learning spaces. So you have the school as normal learning spaces you're used to, but you have the FabLab as a learning space where you get a whole different set of impressions and experience from all the equipment there is and all the other people there are. or again, having a FabLab dedicated, or like at least once a week. Oh, there's a typo. Having at least part of the FabLab dedicated to children's work, like having open for, I don't know, 1 or 2 days, especially for children, and provide caretaking, or like at least secure working for them at that point. So this is the point we are right now. Like, how can we establish long-lasting individual, or like more or less individual-based working for children at the FabLab, which is not an obvious and such an easy task. But like, coming back to all this discussion we had about curricular and how to integrate the FabLab to the school, I asked the children at the FabLab like about their notion of what a FabLab is and how it would connect to school and if they would want it. And essentially, because this was like, we want to learn something, like, yeah, what do we want to learn? I essentially asked them like, what topic or what curricula in school would you feel the FabLab associated with? Like, where would it fit for you? So their first answer was computer science, which is not surprised. I mean, nobody's surprised by that. But then the second answer was like arts and crafts, which is a bit surprisingly. And then there came like mathematics and physics and like technical craft and fine arts. And then there were discussions why it should fit into one of those or not. Because like one thing is boring and you would not want FabLab to be part of a boring lesson, or one thing. Really, this is like the discussions that evolved around this thing. And there, at some point it was even the discussion about Geografie und Wirtschaftskunde, which is a weird curricula combining geography and economics we have in Austria. Like even that popped out at some point. So I found this quite interesting, that for them it was not that obvious that a FabLab is about education and physics, whatever, but it was like, it could be here, whatever, we don't really know, yeah. They then agreed on that it actually has to be a new curricular. And it has to be a curricula where you learn how to handle a computer, but we essentially get to create stuff yourself, which which is nice, but yeah. No, why I put this up here is because maybe this is also like showing a bit the potential of a FabLab, not to be like connected uniquely to one curricular, but like being a new learning or whatever, not just learning, but a new environment where it's interdisciplinary work can arise. And like FabLab is essentially, we heard in a lot of different talks, like essentially the talk before, it's like art and it's craft and it's engineering to a big extent. You have to know the skills to, yeah. But it's also like business, maybe if you want to go on and sell your keychains or whatever. Yeah. So I hope I'm good in time because this is my last slide. Yeah. That's just what I wanted to write down for you and say to you. So thank you. Open for questions.